Welcome to our product overview session on Knewton Alta, the adaptive, mastery-based platform that really works with student success because we offer a personalized learning path. Let's look at this, right? Because nobody really wants to just talk through things. So let's jump into what this looks like. Now, my favorite part of this as an instructor, because I teach with this, is that my students, right, I integrate with Canvas, so they don't have to go find it. They don't have to lose another password. They go right in through their course, and it's nice and easy. They know what they're working on because the title stares at them in the face. And then, students claim to not be able to find things. So the start button is a different color and it's right in front of them. So I love that students can see the title. If they want to look at all the objectives they can scroll to the bottom. But my students don't do this, right? My students want to jump in. They want to get their homework done. So my students, and I'm guessing a lot of all of this, just hit start. Now, if you think about just in general, I prefer to know what's going on, and students do too, right? Data shows that students want to know what they're working on. So you can see, I call it the purple racetrack at the top, you can see the objective. So students always know what they're working on because the objective is stated at the top. They can also see the mastery bar, so they can see their progress through the assignment. And that's a nice thing, right? Students want to know how they're doing. So we give them all of this information as they go. Now, let's get into the actual problems, because if it's not good content, it's not going to help students, right? So in this particular problem, students are expected to do quite a bit here. They're going to have to manipulate the equation by completing the square. Tends to be difficult for students. And then they have to find the center and the radius of the circle, and then graph. And we really like Desmos graphing. Think about when students are asked to use an online system for graphing and it's just multiple choice. Do they really have to know how to graph? Yeah, you could argue that a couple different ways. But with Desmos, it's very interactive, it's ADA accessible, and students can move around easily, but they actually have to know the center and the radius of a circle to get this correct. Now, this is a free response question, right? Students freely responding, and therefore we give them 2 tries. Because we know if students are doing homework, right, it's very possible that they added when they should have subtracted, or they missed 2 numbers, or they wrote a 5 instead of a 2, or whatever. So they miss it the first time, they can go back, check their work, and then go, oh, there's my mistake, and they might get it right the second time. Or they might not. That's fine, right? Students are going to make mistakes. Students are going to have knowledge gaps, right? If students can't complete the square, this is going to be very difficult for them. But you'll notice we don't just give them the correct graph and then say, you should have completed the square, because that's not helpful. We want to be helpful to students, to help them understand the concepts so they can actually learn and retain the information and then perhaps use it again in another topic. So if you look at this question-specific answer explanation, it's, yes, we need to complete the square. So let's talk about how to do this. Don't forget, this is your first step. Now we have to do this. Here's the math. So we explain it as we go through the steps. If you just give students the little, here's the math, some students are like, well, I don't know where that 44 came from, or I don't know where that 6 came from. So it's important that we discuss how and why these things are happening. Right? Data shows students who miss questions spend more time before they hit continue, and you'll notice next problem up. So this is that continuous path we're talking about, and it's personalized. Personalized because depending on how I answer that first question, how long it takes me, all of that determines my second question. And as I get this question wrong, and I still have that question-specific feedback, and how much time do I spend here working on this, comparing the work, hopefully they're showing their work, and then I click continue. Alta is gathering all of this information on the student and saying, okay, I can see how the student is going. I can see if the questions need to get harder or more or easier or whatever. So at this point, which I think is really important, I've missed 3 questions in a row, and it's not necessarily a number, but it's obvious that I'm not really too sure on things. So Alta says, let's take a time out and let's maybe try something else. Instead of just giving Becky another question, which is probably not going to go so well based on the previous work, Alta has stopped and is giving me a piece of instruction. Now, we offer instruction at least 2 ways, right? So this is called a text piece. So if you think about a chapter in a textbook is divided into section, and then every section has like a couple different concepts in it, if you will. And so we take whatever concept, whatever objective, and we cut out that piece and we use it. We want students to have focused work. We don't want them to just be clicking through an ebook and trying to find what they need. We don't want them to be searching YouTube to hopefully find the right video. We want to give them what they need. So now as we go through, and you can see this entire example. This is a text piece. We have some examples. We click continue and we're continuing on that path, right? So now we have more questions. And I'm going to move a little more quickly. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so again, I teach. And my students, like all students across the country, tend to have some knowledge gaps here and there, right? Everybody does. It doesn't matter what class you're in or what subject matter. We all have knowledge gaps. And so my question was like, if students are, have a knowledge gap, are they going to spend all their time in the refresher? Are they going to just drop back and be stuck? And the answer is no. And what else I like is that, look at this. I've missed quite a few questions. I have, right? We've got our first line of defense is the answer explanations, and I could argue they're by far the best I've seen, and I've seen a lot of product, right? And they're good because they're not just general. It's not just, don't forget to complete the square. These are the general directions, and then don't forget you got to find the center and the radius of a circle. Here's the general form, and this is where it is. It talks about every problem step by step, so students can really see what they did. And then you'll also notice there are no like mimicry options. They can't bring up an example on another screen and just walk through the steps side by side, right? They have to actually understand what's happening. Now on this question, you can see I've missed a few. I stopped counting because I was talking, but I missed a lot of questions. And now Alta says, okay, the answer explanations weren't enough. The forced instruction wasn't enough. We are now going to give you a refresher. And notice that wording, right? More than likely, if students are in a class, the refresher is not going to be something new. We're not throwing new content at them. We're saying, okay, there is something where you either haven't used it in a while, or maybe the first time you did it, you were a little shaky on it, because that happens, and that's okay. So we're going to refresh you. We're going to go back and we're going to talk about these things. And now we are in that same flow. So if you think about it, if I get this question wrong, okay, sorry, and it's free response, so maybe I, forgot something, and it says, okay, so we're just trying to move this formula, so it's all about completing the square. Now we can always view more instruction, right? So viewing more instruction, it's not going to tell me how to solve that specific problem. Excuse me, it's going to give me perhaps a video, right? We saw the instruction, the text piece first, now we see a video. All of our videos have descriptive transcripts because maybe some student just watching the video is not enough. They want to read what's happening, and that's great. We hope that at some point, enough of this is going to help the students and jog their memory. And a lot of time it does, right? Only 13% of our students actually drop into a refresher. That's like overall assignments, because the answer explanations and the forced instruction, those 2 lines of defenses are pretty great. So now as I start to get questions right, you'll notice that even when I get something right, I still have an answer explanation. This one happens to be in video form. Not all of them, as you have seen, are in video form, but some of them are. Now, because we are in a refresher, this does not go toward mastery of the assignment. The mastery of the assignment only comes in the goal objective. Now, you'll notice I missed a question in the refresher, but then I got a couple right. I viewed some instruction, and then I'm right back to the goal topic. So students aren't going to spin their wheels in the refreshers. They are literally just there to refresh and get them back to the goal topic. So now, as I start to get questions right, we can see what happens. Okay, we don't want students to really feel like they're spending, hours and hours in homework, because that's not necessary. So I got a question right, my assignment mastery jumped pretty quickly. Now, there's only one objective here. If there were more, the mastery bar would fill more slowly because there's more objectives to master. But the big thing to know is that our mastery bar is going to jump for a couple of different reasons, or at different lengths of, quickness. And it's going to be on how difficult is the question, how much time did they spend per question, how many questions right in a row did they get. So all of those things go together, all of those variables go into the brain to help the students get to mastery. So, and another thing I want to throw out when I said question difficulty, that's not set by Alta, right? That is set by every student who comes into contact with that particular question. So on this question here, if 90 out of 100 students get it wrong, that's a hard question. So if I get it right, my mastery bar is going to jump quicker than if I got it wrong, right? Or I guess it would go up higher. So if I get questions wrong, so let's just go ahead and get this one wrong and see what it does, right? Now, because I got that question wrong, my mastery goes back a little bit, right? It does not move forward and back at the same rate. It depends on the difficulty of the question, how long I spent, right? All of those variables go into it. But students are going to go back and forth depending on how they're doing. Now, in this case, it's given me some more instruction. I'm going to just click quickly through this, and let's finish out this assignment. Now, our data shows, right, that when students get the question right, they spend less time before they just click continue, where students who get the question wrong spend more time between submit and continue because they're actually using that answer explanation, which this is not shocking to anybody, I don't think. And then another thing to throw out is that, as an instructor, so I email my struggling students, right, that I get the email, it tells me who's struggling where. I'll send them a personalized email, and a lot of times they tell me that, the answer explanations helped, I'm fine. I get to the end, I see the confetti, and now I'm done. Another thing my students really like is that they can always go back and practice. I always think it's weird that students are like, no, I really like that I can go back and practice. And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. I've had students tell me they love not having a set number of questions because it's daunting when you have 25 questions. But when it's just like the next thing up and they're just doing it, they don't know how many questions they're doing. So it's not a problem. You can see in this case, I saw 5 activities. That's instruction, that's questions, that's all together. And my students have never complained. I've been teaching with Alta for 6 semesters. They have never complained on the number of questions they've seen because most of them don't know how many questions they've seen until they get done and they look. But because they tend to have 100% at the end and they understand, their word, not mine, they understand when they're done, it doesn't bother them. So it's generally a very good experience as they work through, they understand, they spend less time in refreshers as the semester goes on because they retain the knowledge that they've learned at the beginning and they apply it throughout, which is also very nice. So as the content gets harder, their homework actually gets shorter because they've been filling in the gaps as they go. So that is a brief product overview of Knewton Alta. Now, I did do this with a math course, but it works the same with chemistry, biology, psychology, econ, right? The concept is the same, that we're going to fill in the knowledge gaps, whether that's vocabulary or in chemistry, if you need a math booster, we will boost your skills. So it's important to recognize what do you need to be successful with this particular objective. Alta is going to make sure you have that. And if you don't, we will fill in the gaps, no matter the content, no matter the objective. We are here to help you and your students fill in the gaps where they have them and not bore them the rest of the time. Thanks for joining.